right, part 2. We'll see if this works at all. All right, so let's say I wanted to have a script that was something like connects, migrate, latest. All right. This only works if that other user has connects installed. So part of what we're trying to get away from with this package management is everybody's computers needing to be exactly the same. And so it'd be just as easy to install connects and have that do something like that. And now you don't need it globally installed anymore. But yes, it is popular. It is possible. It's just becoming unpopular. Okay. So I've got Express. I want to make an app with it. And I want it to listen to any request coming in on port 3500. And I want it to respond to GET requests to the root by responding with that string. Ta-da! This is a node server. This is kind of what they look like. So if I node app.js, it kind of looks like my computer freezes until I go to localhost 3500 and see hello world. Little bit less code than Rails, huh? Questions about this?
So like, what would it look like if you wanted to build a method or build a function into that? Like have the function say hello world instead.
Cool. So it might be something like that. This is the same in Rails as like render JSON and actually, if you want to do exactly the same, there's a similar method there, and it would be like Rails node Express, strictly speaking. But this is just a function body. We can do whatever we want in here. We can generate that string. We can look stuff up in a database. We can do whatever else we need to do. Make an API call. And then this is what ends it. More questions?
Can you promise chain onto that?
Yeah, totally. So I can do promise.resolve. This just makes a promise that's already resolved, so you can dot then off of it. Whole bunch of promises. Throw that in there. One of the things that takes a while to get used to with Express is these functions don't return. That's not part of the mental model for Express. we call send or JSON on the response. That's what ends a function. But it allows us to do stuff like all this asynchronous madness without worrying too much about return values. If I do that, pew, pew, pew. Other questions about this? Cool, your turn. So what I want you to do, let's see what I got in here. I'm gonna wipe all of this out. All right, nothing in this folder. I want you to follow along this time. So this is presuming you have Node installed. You would know that you had Node installed if you followed the setup instructions on day one. But you should be able to do which node and see something kind of like that. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to give yourself a package JSON file. So we're going to do that with npm init. And we can do -y and it'll just default all the answers for us. npm init -y. Cool. So now we have this package JSON file. Now we're going to install Express. npm install Express. Then we're going to make a JavaScript file that's going to run all this stuff. Touch app.js. We're going to open it up. We're going to require in Express. It's installed into this project, but I can't use it in this file unless I require it. So say Express is require, and then the string Express. I don't have to call it Express. I can call it Bart. I can call it whatever I want. It's just a variable. I make an app by invoking Express. It's a function. I tell app that it should listen for HTTP requests on some port. Like that. I think it doesn't matter if it's a string or an integer, but make it a number. And then in between those two things, just like in Rails router, we're looking for a method and a path. So app.get is going to match get requests. And slash is going to be root of the folder. I could also do app.post to /users. That would be like what I would expect I would do to create a new user or something like that. All right, so I make a get request to the root. The second argument to this is a function. Second argument to this is a function. Second argument to this, it's a function. I'm going to show you 3 different ways to write this to really underscore that. The way that I did it before was with the fat arrow. Request response, fat arrow it, open it up. Totally legit way to do it. We could have also used the function keyword. Like that. We could have also made a standalone function that takes in request and response and then done that. All 3 of these are identical. Takes in a string with the path and then the function that you want to fire off whenever something matches that. The request object that's getting passed in here is all the details about the HTTP request that caused this function to go. The response object is full of all the things that we're going to send back, the status code, whatever else. We can modify those things. We can add response headers. We can do tons of stuff. We're going to call it response.json. It's a function. And we're going to pass in an object to it. Now, if we run this file, we should be able to see that JSON string come back. So this is on port 4000. All right. So if I go over to port 4000 in my browser, there it is. All right, who's having problems?
Did you have to like run a server or anything to get it on port 4000?
This right here is what makes it on port 4000. I have to run this file. That was what the node app.js is all about.
Okay.
But when I run that file, that line is telling it what port it should run on. Other questions?
So you have request and response as parameters for the function that you're putting in. Do we ever do stuff with the request? Like, is that how we would get form data for a post or something like that?
You build a file. That's exactly what you do. Now, you don't get it for free. Like, one of the things you'll learn very quickly working with Express is how much Rails did for you. So let's say I wanted to like send over like post body stuff. So I actually need another library for that called body parser. That's body-parser is the name of the library, and then we generally camel case that stuff when it comes into JavaScript. So we take body parser, and then we do app.use bodyparser.json. That'll allow it to interpret any JSON data that we send over in a body. And then this, let's see, I'll make another one. If I make a post request to the root, I can send back whatever I was given. Rec.body for me. Cool. If I just want to see what the request body looks like for that, I can go over to Postman. Wait all year for Postman to open. All right, so I make a post request to 4,000. And over my body, I want to send, sure, why not? Connection refused. Oh, I'm not running it, that's why. So if I run the server, nope, that's not running the server. If I run the server and try that again, hey, look, it came right back. Other things you might do with the request, you might take credentials, like a token or something gets passed over, and look up a like a user from the database or something, and make request.user. Now I can like access the user in any route. It's pretty cool. I might also like change the response so that the response set gets new headers that say access control allow origin asterisk or whatever. That's cores. That's all it is.
So if you were trying to like pull out a token from a user that was in their header, would that be request.header instead of request.body?
Is that headers? I think so. Here's how I would find out. Express docs. All right, there aren't a whole lot of different parts of Express. This is all of them. So if we look at the request object, say, that's the application. There we go. So I think it's get actually. There we go. Rec.get, and then whatever the name of the header is. By the way, I don't know if you guys realize this. So refer is what is the URL that generated this HTTP request? Like what URL were they on? In the official spec, they spelled refer wrong. It's one of those things that is now just part of the internet. And many a developer has like lost some sanity, like debugging a referrer problem. Other questions about this?
Will a linter catch the misspelling of referrer?
Yes. Yeah, it's not like an uncommon problem or something. It's pretty well known at this point, and it's anything that like depends on that is either flexible, like Express is, and it'll just fix it for you, or yeah, like linters, all those things. Like, yeah, everybody's trying to help you out on this one. And you can do rec.header also.
Can you talk about how to connect in a database?
That's probably a longer conversation, but let's see. Oh, fuck it. I'll show you. So let's say I want this to look up a bunch of dogs. I'm going to speed around this. There are quite a few steps to it. Again, Rails gave you an awful lot of stuff for free. So I would install Connects. Connects is, that's my favorite like database management tool for Express. I would run that Connects thing that I just installed to make a migration. Migrate, make dogs. Create dogs table. Whoop. Oops, that's right. I have to npm connects init first. You need to tell it, what's my database? How do I connect to it? All that kind of stuff. So it makes this boilerplate file for me. I can get rid of the stuff I'm not using and say, all right, I want this to use Postgres. Actually, fuck, I'll just do it with SQLite 3. It's fine. All right, so it's going to make a SQLite 3 database and put everything in there. Cool. So I need to install the SQLite driver for this. Cool, now I'm going to try to do that migration again. And there we go. So I can edit that migration, which looks an awful lot like these things did in Rails. The difference is Rails has this change method that all these things happen in that will automatically figure out how to go backwards when you roll something back. Connects doesn't have that. You have to explicitly say how to go forward and backward. So we're going to return connect schema, create table, dog. And we'll say table dots. We also don't get a free auto incrementing ID field. You have to tell it that you want that. You can say, all right, dogs have names and ages. And then to roll this back, we would return connects.schema.drop table if exists dog. Cool. So we made a migration. So I npx connects migrate latest. And it's done. So now I want to connects seed make some dogs. All right, so I go over to that seeds file that it generated for me. I clear everything out of the dog table, and then I insert some stuff into the dog table. Something like that. Cool. So I can run those seeds. All right. So I got some seeds. Now, if I want to access that database, I'm going to make a database connection. Don't get anything for free. Move over to this database connection. I'm going to require in the connects library. I am going to read in that connects file. Just like in Ruby, like things that are just my files, I can require those in also, but I have to start with a // just like in Ruby. And then I'm going to export from this module something like that. Oops. Also need to tell it to use the development key, because that connects file, it's just a JavaScript object. So I want it to return back this object here. So I can either read that out of the environment, like process.env.node.env, or if that's not set, default it to development. And then return connects called with whatever that config is. All right, so now over here, I can say const database is require database connection. And then in this one, I can say, yo, database, hook your boy up with some dogs, run a select query on it, and then take those dogs and show them to me. Cool. Let's see if it works. All right, I was able to run it without it throwing up on me. That's a good sign. I make a post request to localhost 4000. Hey, it's my buddies. There you go. Database connected. Ask me some more questions.
Is that dot select just like a SQL query?
Yep. So connects is, it's not an ORM like Active Record is. It's what you would call a query builder. So we write very SQL-like syntax, but you write it in JavaScript. So we can do things like where age is 4 or whatever. And it'll translate that into SQL for you. What else?
Kyle,
Yep.
we have a request, we have response, and we can also put the next. What?
Yeah, it's true. So there's an optional third argument to these functions that you pass in. These functions have a name. They're called middleware functions. So we don't need it there because we're not using it, but I'll give you an example of somewhere else that we might use it. let's say, like this doesn't have cores right now. So what I could do is, let's say I want to set a header. So I can do response.set access control allow origin star. So that's just adding that header to whatever response I eventually send, and then call next. So what happens is I make a get request to the root, matches this this handler here. It adds that to the response and then says, cool, you got anything else that matches this? Why, I do. And here, response will have access control allow origin added to it. Prove it. So this one didn't. Oop. Oh, that one didn't either. What the fuck?
Header is down in the lower menu.
Oh, yes.
There's in there.
Come on, Kyle. There we go. Ta-da. Change it to that. There's my very passive aggressive access control allow origin header. One of the technologies that we skipped was Sinatra. Express is Sinatra in JavaScript, very similar kind of thing. But it's this pattern of being able to have multiple handlers for the same thing that are just modifying these request and response things and going through some successive steps. You can also imagine that, like, I have one of these that logs in and it looks for credentials and it looks up a user and it adds a request.user property and then just goes, cool, next. That's the middleware pattern. Here's what it looks like on the Firebase app. So those little functions, those middleware functions, they're essentially controllers. There you go. You're trying to delete an assessment. It's going to try to run through this authentication middleware, and then it's going to call the controller for that route. Ta-da!
Good.
Cool. So if you want to play around with this some more, I'd recommend you go over to the Express site and go over to Getting Started and follow along with the steps. This Express generator, this is nowhere near as powerful as something like Rails is, but it will scaffold out a full Node app for you, like folder structure and stuff. It doesn't do anything after that, but might be an easier way to get started. Cool. Anything else?
So this follows MVC convention too?
Not really. You can sort of make it do that. And like my brief editorial on that will be MVC is, so it's an idea from the 80s. It way predates the web. And that metaphor has been tortured to death. It's Even in Rails, like I don't think it super makes sense to call that MVC because it downplays the importance of the router. And then we'll say, oh, on the front end, we have these MVC frameworks. Not really. Like, if we were coming up with a metaphor today, model view controller is not what we would come up with. It's really just like, all right, well, that's what people are familiar with. And like, I don't know, just with some tweaks, it's a little bit different, but like it's more or less the same thing. Well, people have been doing that for like 40 years now. So doesn't feel like it makes quite as much sense as it used to. I would say that Express is middleware pattern is how I would describe this architecture style. But some ideas like controllers and views and some of these things like aren't inappropriate. But I would bristle a little bit at calling it an MVC framework. Cool. Anything else? All right, go make some Express apps. Bye.